Thank you. We have some breaking news into the newsroom right now. The man known to many of us as the bike path rapist has died. According to the Department of Corrections, Altemio Sanchez died today at Millard Fillmore Suburban Hospital. Sanchez had been serving a sentence of 75 years to life at Wendy Correctional Facility in Alden. He was convicted for killing 3 women dating back to 1981 and was also accused of raping dozens of women. Prosecutors ultimately used DNA evidence to link him to those murders. Sanchez's cause of death will be determined following an autopsy.
Wearing a plaid shirt inside a small restaurant, leaving a great impression on people as he always does for over the countless years, as everybody has said. Anytime they encountered this man, he was always polite. He was always, they would say he was a good person to come across and great positive vibes, and he was respectable but woolly, unremarkable. And he always left a lasting impression on everybody that he came across. Wasn't that tall, wasn't the best looking, short and kind of bald, but it was something about him that he always left an impression that everybody would say that he left. And he's wearing a plaid shirt in this restaurant. And this woman, Rebecca Klaus, last Saturday, she encountered him. And she noticed that he was rearranging the tableware in front of him. And she was like, well, that's compulsively, but she thought, hey, whatever. She was the manager of the restaurant in Latin America called Soleil, and she was trying not to stare at him. But there was also 3 undercover detectives in this restaurant as well. And they were looking at this guy as well. And the person that they were looking at was Altemio Sanchez. Now, in the restaurant, one of the detectives showed Mrs. Klaus's badge and told him not to say anything because he was under suspicion. They didn't want to blow a cover. So what he told her was he told her not to touch anything at the table that Mr. Sanchez was on because they were going to investigate and get his fingerprints and do everything that they needed to do to get the information that they needed to get to commit him for the crime of rape, because they had him under suspicion for a couple of months now. And everything is led up. So she didn't touch anything. But Mr. Sanchez shared something with a woman who was also there who matched the description of his wife. So that was the reason that they had everything that they needed to go to see that this was the information that they needed to get the fingerprints, to get the DNA that they needed to get to match him to the crimes. So what they did was they had a busboy come there and clean up all the plates because they couldn't just sit there. It would look suspicious and would have people still coming into the restaurant trying to eat. So they had the busboy come and take everything and move the dishes to a certain part so they couldn't touch anything and nobody can remove any of the information. But what happened was they took the information and they took what they needed to get. And once they did that, they matched everything. And this is how the story of Altemio Sanchez came about. Altemio Sanchez is a convicted serial heiress and a serial killer. He went in regards to serial killing in Ireland between the years of 1975 and 2006. He stalked and hunted women in the area of Buffalo, New York. He's known as the bike path killer because he frequently targeted women on these bike paths. So what he would do is he would wait and to see a woman, and he would literally stalk them to see if they're by themselves, to see if anybody was following them. And then once he didn't, he would take them to one, he would grab them and take it to an area and R them. And a lot of times he has a lot of cases where he did R them, but he had 3 cases where he actually committed murder. And those 3 women we will talk about later on. One of them is Linda Yalen, the other one is Magine Major, and the final one we'll get to in a moment. But for right now, we're going to get into the background of Altemio Sanchez. Now, Altemio was born in San Sebastian, Puerto Rico, of January in 1958. He was the youngest of 3 children, and his father, Altemio Sanchez Sr., left him when he was 2 years old. And it really turned out to be one of the worst things that happened to him. A father leaving is not the best thing to happen, but the reason his father left is because he fell in love with a prostitute. Now imagine that as a 2-year-old kid, you have a good family and all of a sudden everything's ripped away from you in regards to your father leaves family for somebody who does sex work. But in regards to that, it kind of messed him up. And it definitely messed his mother up, who's Lucy Caraballo. She tried to cut her pregnancy off with Sanchez short, and she was taking high dose of pills and everything just to kill him. She didn't want him. And that's already messed up. See, this is how villains are made in the beginning of the wombs, because the babies do feel that information. They feel those vibes. Everything that the mother feels, the baby feels as well, because they're connected. So he's feeling that as a baby inside the womb. And imagine coming out and you found out your mom took a bunch of pills just to try to get rid of you, because she didn't want to deal with you or deal with your father or deal with anything that had to deal with the family. That's crazy information, and nobody should have to deal with that. But he did have to deal with it. Now after that, Lucy, she moved the family to New York, Buffalo, New York. And that's when everything started to take place. That's when he started to realize who he was. And that's when things started to take a turn for the worse. Now, Lucy would tell Altemio on a frequent basis that she didn't want him, that he wasn't wanted, when he was just a young child at the age of 6 years old. Imagine being told at the age of 6 years old you're not wanted. The person that's supposed to take care of you and love you and feed you, do everything, is telling you that you're not wanted at 6 years old. You're a child. You don't know anything about the world, and yet here you are having to deal with a bunch of BS like that. This is how villains are made. And in regards to Altemio, his story did take a turn for the worse. Now, I'm not on his side in regards to anything that he's doing. All I'm saying is this is how villains are made. Now, he lived in North Collins, New York, which is near Buffalo, New York. He wasn't actually in there, but he was physically and sexually abused as well by his mother's boyfriend when he was a child. He also got beat in front of her. She also got beat in front of him as well. And when he was a teenager, he attended high school. He was very involved in sports. He was one of the best. He could play any sport that he wanted to put his mind to. He was just all around an athletic kid. But he had no girlfriends. And usually when you play sports, you get a lot of, the girls always want to come to you. They always want to be the one with the job. He had no women. Now, it was also said that he later admitted he was afraid to talking to women. So that could affect and everything like that. So it kind of is like a catch-22. Like, yeah, you're so good at sports, you can get the women, but you're scared to talk to them, which is the crazy part. His mother told him, once again, that he was a mistake. And it was in regards to this, he started trying to go through everything, but he started getting touched, as I said earlier. So this started to actually form his sexuality and actually start to make him think a different way and start to go down that route. It was happening to him, and hurt people, so the only thing he could think about was hurting somebody else as well. But maybe not in regards to hurting, maybe in regards to more sexual satisfaction, which in regards, that's what the arts do. Now, here's where everything starts to get crazy. In 1975, at the age of 17, is when Sanchez believed to commit his first rape. He graduated high school, and then he enrolled in an industrial arts program at Buffalo State College. And in 1978 is when he met his wife, Kathleen Whitley, at the college, and started dating her. She became the first and only woman to be known of Altemio Sanchez being involved with. The first and only one. And literally the previous year, he had committed the first rape, positively attributed to him. So he met his wife, but a year before that, he already committed his first rape. And then to meet your wife, now that is some scary stuff. So I can only imagine the kind of things that he maybe did to try to get her. Maybe it could have seemed a little stalkerish because he was already on that path. But who knows? She seen something in him. Maybe there wasn't any red flags. There never really is, especially if they saying that this person was nothing but genuine and a good person every time they seen him. But in regards to this, everything isn't what it seems. Never judge a book by the cover. Now, when she became pregnant, he dropped out and took a job at a factory called Trico. And 2 years later, they had married, and they ended up having 2 sons. One was named Christopher Sanchez, and the other was named Michael Sanchez. In 1977, Altemio attacked a woman while she was riding her bike, smashing her in the head. He then threatened her with a knife. While he attacks her, he insists on telling her that his name is Dave, knowing that his name isn't Dave and it's Altemio. Probably his way of trying to throw people off and make sure nobody catches on to him, but he insists on calling the name Dave. He didn't actually R her, he just rubbed up against her without penetration, which is kind of weird. One of those real crazy things, like I just want to touch you, want to get close to you. But that's what he did. She was one of the lucky ones, but she did get threatened with a knife, so it was probably really traumatizing to have somebody to come up and rub up against you, trying to get the rocks off. And then on April 14th of 1981, Sanchez attacked and raped a 20-year-old female victim in the woods of Delaware Park at the statue of David. He used a knife in the attack as well. She reported that to the cops, but once again, nothing can be done. And then on November 19th of 1983, Altemio Sanchez raped a 21-year-old female in the woods near the David statue of Delaware Park again, but at this time, he used a gun as his attack. So we seeing how everything started from him just rubbing up against with the knife to now he's arring and then using a gun as well. So now the next thing is murder. He's already threatening with dangerous weapons. So now the next thing that we can only imagine was murder, and then it happened. The third rape victim at Delaware Park, Altemio Sanchez raped a female again near the statue of David in Delaware Park. He used a gun in this attack as well. Then in December 22nd of 1983 is when he had his fourth victim, a 28-year-old female in Delaware Park. But then it was a turning point for Altemio. He attacked a 20-year-old victim, and the victim noticed that he put down his pistol and he covered her eyes to not see her face. So she grabbed the gun and beat him with it. But after regaining control of his rape victim, this event believed to have made Sanchez begin to use ligature in his subsequent attacks. So this woman fought back. She wasn't just gonna sit there and just let anything happen. She fought back and she fought for her life. In that moment, it was fight or flight, and she chose to fight. But then on April 3rd of 1984, he attacked a 22-year-old female at 1700 Elmwood Avenue near the railroad overpass. And this woman was also another rape victim. Once again, the second time this happens in 1985, he goes by the name of Dave again. So we're guessing that Dave is his alter ego. Dave is just somebody that he uses when he goes out to do his thing, because maybe Altemio's the good guy and Dave's the bad guy. So if we blame it on Dave, Altemio can always look like the good guy. But for the second time, his victim, he's raped her as the name of Dave. Now his sixth victim was a 44-year-old female jogger, and this happened around 9:30 in the morning. He approached her while she was jogging, and after he passed her, he turned around and attacked her from behind using a ligature. Now remember, after the last time, he said once the woman fought back with a gun that he was gonna start using ligature in his attacks. So on this one, he started off automatically with the ligature to make sure nothing goes wrong from the get-go. He took her under some underbrush near the path. He tightened the ligature until she lost consciousness, at which point he raped her. But he was linked to this crime through the DNA match. So on this one, they found his actual DNA and they linked him to the crime. Now, this is one of the ones where it gets crazy in regards to that, and this is one of the ones that helped take him down because of that DNA evidence. But on July 14th of 1986, Altemio Sanchez raped a 17-year-old high school student at 9:20 in the morning. He's getting very brazen and very good with these 9:20 in the morning, 9:30 in the morning. In the morning, when there's people out and about and during the daytime, anybody can see he's doing it. So now it's not even just like bold, he's just crazy at this point. To do something like that, you just don't care. And a lot of people are like that. When they don't care, there's nothing you could do. And he's one of those people. But he attacked her from behind and he wrapped a white clothesline around her neck twice, just to control her, just to make sure that he had full control and she couldn't go nowhere. He forced her down a path about 300 yards away where he raped her so nobody could see her. So he got her in the middle of broad daylight, put her twice around her neck to control her so she couldn't breathe, couldn't talk, 100 yards away where he raped her. He told her to wait about 20 minutes before making any moves so he can make sure he was out of there, so he can make sure nobody can recognize, so he can make sure nothing can link him back to what just happened. But he messed up again. Then in 1989, once again, he goes by the moniker of Dave. So this, once again, as I said, we start seeing him go as Dave. This is his alter ego now. So Dave is now the guy that's doing all this stuff. It's not Altemio, it's Dave. And this is the 22-year-old victim. And then he had another victim on May 1st of 1989, on August 24th of 1989, May 31st of 1990. And then is when he gets to his first murder. Now, September 29th, 1990, Altemio murdered Linda Yalem, and he attacked the 22-year-old University of Buffalo student on Ellicott Creek bike path in Amherst, New York. And his attack method is unknown, but he raped her and strangled her to death. Her body was found the following day in the underbush near the path, which Sanchez was linked to later on through DNA evidence. But they were said to be that Linda Yalem was just minding her business. She goes on a normal jog every day around a certain time. She told her friend that she was going to jog on a certain time. But it's also said that Altemio was stalking her and seen in the area. So he lured her, he watched her, he basically attacked her from behind like he did anything else. But they said the method was unknown. But pretty much his MO is attacking people from behind once they pass and dragging them to the bushes and raping them and then strangling them to death. This was his first murder of Linda Yalem, rest in peace, and my condolences to her and her family. In 1983, he got a job at the American Brass Company, where he worked until his capture. So from 1983 until 2006, he worked there while he was committing these horrible acts of crime. Now, here's where everything takes a turn. And in 1981, they looked at Altemio in regards to a rape. And so they were already into him, already at 1981 when he committed his first one. Well, he committed a couple more after that. They were already looking into him. Now, they questioned his uncle, Wilfredo Sanchez Carabello. They questioned him about a 1980 rape murder in Delaware Park after the victim saw a man resembling her attacker at the shopping mall. And they basically told him, say, hey, that's the person that attacked me. We want to look into it. So they had him under suspicion already. And they followed him to the car and they wrote down the license plate number. So they took down all the information, they gave it to the cops, and the cops looked into it. And when the victim was shown Mr. Caraballo's picture, she said that wasn't him. She said that was not the person driving the car. And Mr. Caraballo owned the car. He told police that nobody, not even him, had driven the car for over a month. So they already had somebody under suspicion. They got the license plate, but he said nobody drove the car for over a month. Now, he's the owner of the car. But what the crucial detail that he left out is that he lent it to his nephew, Altemio, because Altemio told him that he committed the rape. And his uncle was trying to get him some help, and he tried to cover up for him. Now, I felt that later on, he did yet but lied to the cops in regards to the Delaware Park bike path rapist. So he did lie to the cops and not give them the correct information because he was trying to hide his nephew. Now, over the course of 1980, Sanchez raped over a dozen women. And in September of 1990, he escalated to murder when he fatally strangled jogger Linda Yalem at Ellicott Creek Bike Path. Now, Linda Yalem was a college student trying to get her exercise. They said that she normally gets up around that same time every day just to go for exercise, and she was just going around the path. She told everybody where she was going. And at this time, there was no cell phone, so she couldn't get in contact with anybody, and nobody could track her location. She just told them where she was going, and that's how they ended up finding her as well. It's believed to happen that Altemio, he's seen her down the bike path and watched her for a little bit. She would do the same route, and he finally got her alone and seen the perfect opportunity, and he pounced. And it's believed that she started to scream and started to run away and try to get away, and he was trying to do his thing, and he strangled her to death. Now, he's already had his first rape years ago, and now he's committed to murder. And it's only in a short period of time. Now, Altemio started his outing back in the year of 1975 when he had his first victim. Now, a lot of these victims, their names are unknown, or they just haven't put the names in there because of certain information and the time frame of everything that happened. And a lot of things get lost in regards to the media and everything like that, so it's perfectly understandable. But his first victim was in 1975. Now, the crazy thing is October 9th of 1990, co-worker Bob McGuire, a co-worker of Altemio Sanchez, made contact with Amherst police and told them that he witnessed Sanchez on the Ellicott Bike Path Creek at least twice within the last 14. At 11:10 p.m. on October 9th, 1990, the same night, police set up surveillance of Sanchez's home. So once they gave him this information, they found that suspicious as well, that within 14 months, he was seen twice, and the person has been murdered, and nobody knows why he was there. And it's found that very suspicious. Why were you there, especially if you're not jogging or anything? What's the reason? But you're the only person there at the same time. It's very suspicious. So they set up surveillance around his home. And then in 1991, on January 31st, he had an interview with the Amherst police. He was engaged in a voluntary interview at the Amherst police station. He voluntarily went for an interview to give up the information. And this is a tactic that a lot of criminals and a lot of people who do these crimes actually do. They'll go to give them information to throw them off the track, to make them seem that, hey, I'm here to help out, to take the heat off of me and place it on somebody else. So this was a great move that he did. It didn't work out to the best of his knowledge, but it did work out a lot. And after being questioned for approximately 1 hour, he was released. There was no DNA sample taken at the time, and police only took his fingerprints. So those crimes, he was linked to DNA by his DNA, but that was later on. So they're looking into this, and they set up a surveillance on him. So on January 30th of 1990, he was voluntarily interviewed by the police, and then he was released, but his fingerprints were taken and a sample of his DNA was not. So back in that time, DNA wasn't really a big thing, and he's just a suspect. They didn't have a lot of evidence. They didn't have anything to take his DNA, but they could just get a fingerprint to see if anything they could find on him, see if they could find any fingerprint information. But the DNA was not taken because a lot of that things back then, it was different laws on different times, so they couldn't get that information from him. But if they got it at that time, it would have linked them to the crime and everything would have been solved back then. But hindsight is 2020. And a lot of information that they have now, they didn't have back then. So he was arrested in 1991 for solicitation for trying to pick up an undercover police officer posing as a prostitute. But his charges were just dropped to loitering. So a lot of these things in regards to those situations, the charges can't get dropped to loitering, especially if no money was changed and no sexual act was involved. It can just get dropped because a lot of things are just say so. And if he didn't actually pay or did anything or there was no crime committed, it could just be moved to loitering, which is a lesser charge and just a fine that you got to pay. But in 1992 is when he killed again. Now, he just got picked up in regards to trying to pick up a prostitute for a police officer. Now, what he did was he met Majine Mazur, who was a prostitute. And what he did was he eyed her and then he strangled her. So he has 2 strangles under his belt and ours under his belt in regards to this. So we're thinking the same situation. He lured her down there. He did his thing. He didn't want to pay the money and he just... So that causes a lot of drama, as I said in the beginning, to be around him. Once he did the do, they were no good to him, like a Black Widow. So they call him the bike path rapist. I would call him the Black Widow, the male Black Widow. But he killed her because they had prior contact. And once again, she could recognize his face. So anybody that could recognize his face, he wanted to get rid of. So he raped her, didn't want to pay, and she could recognize his face and tell and say something. So he got rid of her. Only because they had previous contact. Now, if they didn't have previous contact, maybe the same thing wouldn't have happened, but we can't say for sure because in regards to this, he's already got one under his belt and he maybe he's gonna do it again, which he has, and he's proven this twice. Now, in 1999, Sanchez once again was arrested for soliciting prostitution. And once again, his charges were just dropped to loitering because once again, no act took place. But now, he's a serial offender. Following in the footsteps of his father, they love these prostitutes. It just trickles down. Doesn't skip a generation at this point. His father left with prostitutes and he's leaving his family and wife for prostitutes. His father left with prostitutes and he's leaving his family and wife for prostitutes, only to try to hire them and get rid of them once they recognize his face because he doesn't want to pay, he doesn't want to do anything. This man is serious. His family failed him in the beginning, and family failings lead to people failing. We have to place the blame on him. He was the person who done all these horrible crimes, committed these errors, and committed these murders. And he had no remorse for a lot of the things that he did until his capture. But in May of 2005, his mother passed away. And then the next year, his father also passed away. And the crazy thing about it, on September 29, 2006, 16 years to the day of his first murder, he killed again for the 3rd and final time. And this victim was being 45-year-old Joan Diver. But unlike other victims, she wasn't raped. Joan was 45 years old. She was killed by strangulation, blunt force trauma, but she wasn't raped. She was also a mother of 4 and a nurse, and she was always said to go jogging in the bike path of Clarence. She was born in Salt Lake City, Utah. She was the youngest of 7 children. She earned 2 bachelor's degrees at the University of Utah, one in nursing and one in public health. She pursued a career in critical care nursing until 1997, when she became a full-time homemaker. She was especially interested in children's issues and the special relationship between mother and toddler. She planned to return to her profession next year before she got murdered. And after marrying her husband, Stephen, in Utah in 1990, she lived in Madison, Wisconsin, and Boston, Massachusetts before moving to Western New York in 1997. Rest in peace, Joan Diver. Raping is just gone now. You just have to murder, which once they get to that point, there's nothing you can do. They just want to go on the person. And he thought he got away with it. Now he's committed 3 murders. And now the next thing to do is to go into hiding. But what does he do? No. The new nickname emerges on November 11, 2000 as the Bike Path Killer. Formerly known as the Bike Path Artist, they changed it to the Bike Path Killer. And on November 15th of 2006 is when Sanchez will finally be caught, being due to his DNA tying back to the Bike Path Killer of Joan Diver. A droplet of sweat was found on Joan Diver's car after testing for DNA, and it comes back to match as the Bike Path Killer. Now, this is where the beginning of the story kicks in. Remember, he's at that restaurant and they got the information, they seen his DNA, and the 3 undercover cops were there. So they collected his DNA off the linen napkin, the dish, and the straw that he had used at the restaurant. And on the January 14th, 2007, it was a DNA match. The lab reports confirmed that the DNA taken from the straw, the samples, and the items that from the sole restaurant matched the Bike Path Killer and Altemio Sanchez's DNA, and he was known as the Bike Path Killer. And then on January 15th of 2007, they took Sanchez into custody, and he was indicted on January 23rd, 2007 for the 3 murders and the 15 allegations of rape. Now, on May 16, 2007, Altemio just, maybe he had a change of heart, maybe he was just tired. Sometimes when you do a lot of these evil things, the thought and the heaviness on your conscience just weighs on you. Sometimes you just got to get off your chest. It makes you feel relieved even though you'll be in prison and everything. So on May 16, 2007, he pled guilty to the murder in second degree that caused the death of Linda Yalem. Second count was murder in second degree and causing the death of Linda Yalem during the commission of a rape in the first degree. Then the third charge, the murder in the second degree and the causing the death of Margene Melzier. And the count 4 was murder in the second degree causing the death of Joan Divers. So he pled guilty to all 4 of those counts and ended up receiving 75 years to life in 2007. In October 2007, Altemio and his wife Kathleen Sanchez, divorce is official. It's finally official. She doesn't want to be tied with him anymore. She doesn't know anything that's going on, and she doesn't want to take anything that's coming towards her family. She's getting a lot of hate probably at this time. She's getting a lot of people who give her death threats. How did you didn't know? Her sons are probably going through it. Her whole family just doesn't want to be tied to this, and it's just bringing a lot of sadness. And they're going through a lot that they don't have to go through because they're innocent in the situation. They didn't know anything that he was doing at this time. But also, November 8th of 2007, Altemio admitted to 2 more rapes. He was transferred from another prison to another location to be interviewed by investigators, and during the interview, he admitted to 2 more rapes. So this guy wasn't done. He just wanted to get everything off his chest, and he finally did. Now, there's another crazy fact about this story that I forgot to mention. Anthony Capozzi was also somebody who was convicted of Sanchez's crime and actually ended up serving 20 years for crimes, 22 years for crimes he didn't commit, all because of DNA evidence didn't link him back to it, but it was only found out in the year 2007 once Sanchez admitted to the rapes and murders. He was convicted of rape because he had previous convictions of rape. The reported crime date was the one that happened in 1984, and he was convicted in 1987, and he was only exonerated in 2007 once Sanchez admitted to the rapes and murders. He ended up serving 22 years in prison in regards to 2 rapes that he did not commit. Once the DNA tested in March of 2007 showed that another man, Altemio Sanchez, actually committed the attacks, Capozzi, who was convicted in 2007, was actually exonerated in that time. He was sentenced to 35 years at the time, but the biological evidence was collected and exonerated him. And in 2010, Capozzi received $4.2 million in compensation from the state for the wrongful conviction. And in September of 2023, Altemio Sanchez passed away in prison. He actually committed suicide in prison. He couldn't deal with being in prison for 75 years. He was only in there for 16 years of total, and he couldn't deal with it anymore. I'm pretty sure that it wasn't the best time in prison in regards to everything that he did, and probably the family members and people who've been in prison knowing what he does, especially those things, they don't go good once it gets crimes against women or children. Those things usually don't work out for people, and I'm pretty sure it's very lonely in there for him. In 1996, September 29th, years to the day that on the 6th anniversary of Linda Yalem's passing, Altemio Sanchez participated in an annual race in her honor, and his bid number was 679. To be the kind of person to kill somebody and then in the 6th year of the anniversary do a run that they established to help her out and to help the family and to honor her memory, you go and disrespect her even more because you've said that you had some feelings and resentment to murdering her. So you go and participate in the run for her honor. This man was sick. He needed help on a whole different occasion that people didn't have to give him, and his family didn't give him, but the love that he needed and the help that he needed couldn't come from a family. It could only come from professional help.
Haunting memories for those of you who lived through that dark chapter in our history. Altemio Sanchez died on Friday, and tonight the focus is on the victims. Sanchez was serving 75 years to life behind bars after he confessed to killing Linda Yalem in 1990, Majane Mazur in 1992, and Joan Diver in 2006.
Everyone, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. And if you have any videos or if you have anything that you want me to do or do any research on or do a video on, just let me know. Link is in the description, bio's in the description. Thank you once again.